Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to NAHDO's 40th Annual Conference. We will be starting in about 1 minute. Before we begin, we want to cover a few housekeeping items. On your attendee screen, you can enter comments or questions in the chat. We hope you will take advantage of the opportunity to engage with our speakers and other attendees. This session is being recorded. We recognize and thank the California Healthcare Foundation for being our Petabyte sponsors. Information about all conference sponsors is available in the sponsor area of the platform. Please take a few minutes to visit each sponsor's booth where you can find more information about them and find game tokens. Game tokens are keywords or phrases used in the token hunt game for a chance to win prizes in the daily drawings. Now, let me turn the stage over to Norm Thurston, NAHDO's Executive Director. Norm, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Debbie. It's certainly a pleasure to be here with everyone today. We've got already nearly 100 people joining us, and so we're super excited about that. So this is our opening plenary session. My name is Norm Thurston. I'm the Executive Director here at NAHDO, the National Association of Health Data Organizations. And our topic this morning is NAHDO at 40. We have reached our 40th annual conference. This is our 40th year, and so we're excited to talk about what has changed and what's still the same over the many years. First, we want to thank all of our 2025 event sponsors, especially our Petabyte sponsor, California Healthcare Foundation, and the others who you see on screen. We also would like to recognize our collaborating and featured partner programs. So we have several organizations that have joined us to support our work in important ways, including the presentations at this conference. Our newest members are H-Metrics, the New Jersey Innovation Institute, and the Alaska Health Analytics and Vital Records Bureau. We're super excited to have them as part of the NAHDO community. If you are not currently a NAHDO member, we would encourage you to consider joining NAHDO today. Of course, none of this would be possible without our board, who volunteers so much time and takes so much effort to make this happen. So we want to just take a minute to recognize all of the things that our board does for us. And hope that if you run into them, that you thank them as well. The program planning committee this year comprised a lot of people who helped put together, select the presentations, the topics, and we want to also thank them for their efforts to help make this possible today. Just a few pro tips for attendees. So I think many of you, this will be your first time using the WebEx events platform. You may have used WebEx in other ways, but the events platform has a lot of things, like Debbie mentioned, that you can do to help make your experience better. First, we want to just point out that the conference program is easily available. You can find all of the sessions, the times, the presenters, everything that you need to know to find out how to organize your time through the conference program. And also the agenda will take you directly to those sessions. As was mentioned earlier, the token hunt is an opportunity for you to win prizes. The prizes happen to be Amazon gift cards. So for every token you collect, you get one entry into the drawing to win an Amazon gift card. Of course, we want to replicate as much as possible, and we can't do it virtually, but we want to try the opportunity for us to engage and network. So to make that happen, we have networking sessions. We also have sponsor booths. You can find people through the attendees list, and there's the wall where you can communicate with people. The networking sessions are basically small groups of people with their cameras and mics on. As you will notice, you cannot use your camera and mic during these sessions. There's just way too many people. The bandwidth couldn't handle it. But by organizing networking sessions of smaller groups of people, we hope that you'll pop into one of those, or maybe more of those, just to meet people, introduce yourself, and find people who are working on the same topics that you're working on. Of course, we would be remiss if we didn't invite you to a better opportunity to network, which is our 6th annual in-person networking meetings. We will be in Miami, Florida, May 6th to 7th. Make sure that's on your calendar. More information is available on our website. So with that, I am going to introduce Kenley, NAHDO's board chair, who will give her opening remarks. Kenley?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Norm. My name is Kenley Money, Executive Chair of the NAHDO Board of Directors. I'm with the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement and serve as the Director of the Arkansas All-Payer Claims Database as part of the Arkansas Healthcare Transparency Initiative. First, I want to recognize and thank the members of the NAHDO Board for their continued hard work and expertise in leading NAHDO's mission and helping achieve its goals. And most especially, I want to thank the NAHDO Executive Committee, whose leadership and creativity have made my role as chair especially easy. I like to say it takes a village, especially one with passion and expertise in a field that we love. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to NAHDO's 40th Annual Conference, NAHDO at 40, Data and Policy Spanning the Decades. NAHDO is a national nonprofit membership and education association dedicated to improving healthcare data collection and use. NAHDO cut its teeth working with states to implement inpatient, ambulatory surgery, and emergency department data reporting programs beginning in 1986. NAHDO and its members work to do many things: advocate for the development of public domain health data organizations and the use of their data to address national, state, and local issues as well as patient-level concerns. We promote uniformity and standardization of healthcare data collection and dissemination, promote cooperation among public and private organizations that collect, analyze, and disseminate healthcare data, and promote the knowledge and understanding of privacy regulations and practices that protect patient-identifiable data. I would be remiss not to mention the APCD Council, NAHDO's APCD-focused arm. The APCD Council's primary goal is to serve as a learning collaborative amongst APCD stakeholders, provide early-stage technical assistance to states, and catalyze states to achieve mutual goals. NAHDO and the APCD Council are a unique blend of health data expertise, focusing on hospital and emergency department data and administrative healthcare data in APCDs to help states address their common issues, the containment of healthcare costs and improvement of health system performance. Together, they are an invaluable resource, helping states with the integration and use of comprehensive, local, and counter-specific data, supporting the need for transparency in healthcare at the policy and consumer levels. Not resting on its laurels, NAHDO continues to execute and manage useful initiatives such as the Data Quality Forum, set up to investigate data quality inquiries collaboratively to understand challenges and make recommendations for data quality improvement. The Hospital Quality Forum, that provides significant value to NAHDO members operating hospital discharge data programs, focusing on educational material development and increased collaboration and coordination with the AHRQ's HCUP. And the Common Data Layout, or the CDL, a powerful tool for states beginning their APCD journey to reduce implementation time. In addition to the recommended APCD layout that the Common Data Layout, or CDL, contains, it has 3 additional health data formats. 1, non-claims or alternative payment data layout used to collect data not captured by administrative claims. Pharmacy drug prescription rebate layout used to collect dollars paid to payers by manufacturers and PBMs. And the capitation file layout used to accommodate data payments made by a payer to provide for member attributable services under a capitation arrangement. Side note, Arkansas will begin collecting non-claims data and pharmacy rebate data in 2026. The inclusion of these complicated data sources was made very doable and successful because of the non-claims data and pharmacy rebate CDL formats. Without NAHDO's expertise, the foundational set of requirements would not be available to states that have no idea how to do it, and that was me. It's often hard to see the forest for the trees, to know the impact that we, the purveyors of health data, analytics, and research, have externally. Our impact is significant. Case in point. If you search for the criteria APCD or All Payer Claims Database on the NIH report site, and that's capital R, lowercase e, capital P, lowercase o-r-t, for those who don't know, this will return statistics about the number of projects funded by NIH that uses APCDs. The statistics I reviewed began in 2012 with 2 projects, 27 projects in 2024, total funding over $58 million. And this is just NIH. Add to that HHS, HRSA, HRQ, NSF, etc., and those numbers grow and grow. Our APCD and hospital data is rich and robust, and we are having a positive impact on the health of our country. Over the next 2 days, you will have the opportunity to hear what health data experts all over the country are doing. You'll have the opportunity to hear from and chat with old friends and meet new and exciting experts. Some examples of what you might choose from the agenda. Advanced analytics application for uncovering spending variation, climate impacts, and health disparities. Data visualization, empowering insight and transparency with dashboards and tools. Driving data quality, overcoming challenges and best practices for reporting, and closing data gaps, insights from GLP-1, self-insured population, and dental care. There are, I don't even know how many agenda items there are, and that's just the 4 that popped to the top for me. So with that teaser, why don't we move on? I am going to do some preliminary introductions to the next section, and then we'll bring on our next moderator, Kathy Hines. So this year, for our opening keynote, rather than have a single speaker, we decided to do a retrospective on 40 years of NAHDO. We have assembled a group of current and former board members and executive directors to give a holistic review of what's happened over the past 40 years. And as you will see, we have people that together cover the full range of NAHDO's existence. We hope that you will share your thoughts and experiences and recollections in the group chat. We want to hear from everybody. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Hines to take us into our panel. Kathy?
Thank you, Kenley. Before you go, I'd like to welcome Kevin McAvee, NAHDO's vice chair, to say a few words.
So it's such a pleasure to be here today, and it's unfortunate that I've also lost my voice. But it's also apropos, because through the years, Kenley, in your service as chair, you've spoken on behalf of our members so well, so eloquently, and so strategically as new issues arose for us as an organization and our membership had to face year after year. From COVID to states grappling with increasing demands for the services of state health data organizations across the country, to the convergence of our health data world, you've helped us navigate such change. And over the course of the past 3 or 4 years of your service as chair, you've helped us to come out stronger for it. You've helped NAHDO financially prosper, and you've helped our members connect with one another and form this community which will sustain us for many years to come. I just wanted to share a few words of thanks with my wobbly voice for all that you've done in your term as chair. NAHDO has prospered because of it. Our members are stronger because of it. And it has been my personal pleasure to have worked alongside with you through so much change. Thank you, Kenley.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. And I will say this, it's the company that I keep. So. Okay.
As we move on, this session is sponsored by HSRI. So I'd like us to hear a few words from Leanne Kandura.
Good morning and welcome. It's an honor to open this year's NAHDO 40th Anniversary Conference and celebrate 4 decades of leadership, collaboration, and innovation in health data. I'm Leanne Kandura, Vice President at Human Services Research Institute and Director of our Population Health Team. HSRI is proud to sponsor this kickoff session, and I'm personally delighted to be here, not only as a sponsor, but as someone who has served on the NAHDO board for the past 6 years and witnessed firsthand the impact of this incredible community. At HSRI, we believe that good data powers health system changes and better systems lead to better lives. For more than a decade, we've partnered with NAHDO because we share a common goal, helping states and organizations use data to drive meaningful improvements in health and healthcare. For 40 years, NAHDO has been the trusted convener, building the connections, standards, and shared knowledge that makes systems like APCDs and hospital encounter data so powerful. But what truly sets NAHDO apart is the spirit of collaboration, bringing together data stewards, analysts, policymakers, and innovators to tackle complex challenges while always keeping our focus on why the data matters, to improve health, advance equity, and create actionable insights. Through this community, HSRI has had the privilege of partnering with states across the country to expand data infrastructure, strengthen governance, and translate data into insights that drive action. And time and again, the ideas that start in NAHDO conversations ripple outward, shaping policy, advancing transparency, and fueling progress. So why has HSRI continued to sponsor and participate for the past 10 years? Because NAHDO is more than a conference, it's a community of doers. And because of the challenges ahead, from integrating health data systems, addressing inequities, and navigating new analytic frontiers, require exactly this kind of collaboration. On behalf of everyone at HSRI, congratulations to NAHDO for 40 years of leadership and impact. And thank you for the partnership, innovation, and inspiration you continue to provide. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's session featuring some of the field's most visionary leaders who will explore NAHDO's past, present, and future. Thank you for joining us, and please join me in welcoming our panel.
Thank you, Leanne. It gives me great pleasure and is an honor to be the moderator of this year's keynote session, NAHDO at 40. We planned this session to commemorate NAHDO's 40 years, and all of you, the people, the state agencies, the companies and corporate partners that have made NAHDO and its work possible over the past 4 decades. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome back Norm Thurston, along with Jim Bracher and Fred Bodendorf, two of NAHDO's founders, for their retrospective on the origins of NAHDO. As a reminder to the audience, we want to hear your thoughts. Please make comments in the platform chat and send us any questions that our guests can answer.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm certainly excited to be here today to talk about NAHDO at 40 and our history and learning from our past. Today I have with me Jim Bracher and Fred Bodendorf. Both Jim and Fred were there at the very beginning of NAHDO back in the 80s. They were two of the founders of the organization and were original board members. In fact, Jim was the original board chair for the first 3 years and Fred was the vice chair. At the time of the startup of NAHDO, Jim was in Florida when they started their health data program in 1984. And Fred was in Arizona. Fred later moved to Pennsylvania and then ended up in Florida. I think he actually worked for Jim at some point along the way. So they were together in Florida. But we're going to go ahead and start by asking Jim a couple of questions. Jim, why don't you tell us, just set the stage for us. What was life like for health data in that 1984-ish time frame? What was going on around the country with healthcare data?
Well, the genesis, as always, was the cost of healthcare and the fact that it continued to increase and increase and increase. And I think as the early 80s came about and triggered by the adoption of the federal DRG reimbursement system, various people in various states began to see a way that they could begin to make some sense of this and have a way to categorize what was going on in healthcare, the hospital arena primarily, as to get some idea of what I'll use the word cost in quotes, what the costs were of the product that people were buying. There had been continued frustration over the years about what was driving the costs and how people could address it. That DRG adoption it triggered a big activity in Florida. A legislative study committee set up, worked for a couple of years, and came out with a legislative proposal in the 1984 legislative session that ended up establishing what was then called the Hospital Cost Containment Board, gave the board authority to begin collecting DRG charge data from hospitals. It was also, which need to know, it was underpinned by a hospital financial regulatory program. But the key feature was the data that was collected. In Florida, the drivers of this legislation was first of all the insurance commissioner, some of the legislative leaders, and some of the business community. Although the business community in Florida was heavily divided as to what needed to be done. But again, the Florida program got up and going. It started in 1984. By 1985, we published the first hospital charge brochures. When I say brochure, actually it was a trifold pamphlet that we had the average charge by DRG. We're required to do the 10 most frequent. We always added a couple of others onto the list. As I said, we published that in 1985. It was a hit. Understanding back in those days, we had what I think now is called the legacy media. So, we were using newspapers and TV and radios, but, we would hold a press conference, display or talk about the brochures and some of the changes. And, it was a hit with the public in Florida. We were distributing tens of thousands of those brochures. In the beginning, it was I'll use the word hit again with the hospitals, in that as some of the hospitals would look favorable and look better than some of their peers in these brochures, some of the hospitals were actually using this in advertising. That lasted for the first couple of years, and then I think the hospital industry sort of circled their wagons, and that part went away. But again, we ended up distributing those brochures for a number of years. I would just go on and add that in addition to hospital data, we were also given a mandate to begin publishing physician charge data. That information was based on claims to insurance companies, and we began publishing that brochure in 1986. It was even a bigger hit. I think we distributed some 50,000 copies of that in the first 30 days. And remember, again, in those days, you couldn't go online and ask for something. You had to call and leave a voicemail on a recording machine, and then we had to mail it to you. So there was a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about those in the early days.
All right, thank you. So Fred, tell me about the very first meeting, getting together with other people. Where did it happen? When did it happen? Who was there? What did you talk about? Tell me about that first meeting.
So I was in Arizona at the time, in Phoenix, Arizona, trying to implement a new piece of legislation that required the state to publish DRG charge information to promote consumer activism, if you will, or the ability for consumers to shop for healthcare, to promote competition. We did not receive the same reception in Arizona that Jim did in Florida. Unfortunately, there was a lot of concern about how were consumers going to use this information, when in fact it was the purchasers, it was the business community who had really promoted that information from the beginning. And while they were there when the tapes were released, they were the first ones to come and get the data. We didn't hear too much about them when people started complaining about the program. It was at this time when I got an invitation from Willis Goldbeck to come to Washington to meet with him and some other state leaders about publishing this information and the issues that we were running into, beginning to share and commiserate with each other as to what we were trying to do and the barriers that we were running into. I knew Willis Goldbeck from his reputation. I had worked for a health systems agency before going to Phoenix, and Willis Goldbeck's newsletter, the Washington Business Group on Health newsletter, I read it like the Bible. I thought it was one of the most important pieces of information in healthcare at the day. So I knew who he was, and I was very flattered to be invited to go to this meeting. And the meeting was actually held in a small restaurant behind the Capitol, a French restaurant. And there were some other representatives there. There was a fellow by the name of Steve Philibrown from New Jersey, Joan Offit from Colorado, Sal Bagnani from Iowa, Susan Palmer-Terry from New Hampshire. There was a representative from Maryland and also a representative from Tennessee. And Willis came in. We were all seated around a round table, and Willis came in and he just blew me away. I think he blew everyone away because he was not what I was picturing Willis would look like. I thought, okay, this is going to be a very conservative guy. You know, he's the executive director of Fortune 500 executives dealing in healthcare. And I thought, okay, he's going to be very staid and conservative. And he was anything but. He came in, his shirt was unbuttoned almost down to the navel. He had gold chains on, and he was carrying a couple of bottles of wine from his private collection. He proceeded to treat all of us as though we were his board members. It was, like I said, he blew me away. He was smart. He was engaging. He was receptive. He listened to us. And when we left that meeting, we all felt a sense that with his leadership and him supporting the organization, that we would be able to create something new. We knew we would run into some resistance when we got back to the States, but we felt confident that in leaving that meeting, we would be able to start something. He instilled confidence in all of us and commiserated with what we were trying to do and the barriers that we were running into. And we all left with the feeling that if we worked together and we shared information, that we could make our programs work much better at the state level. When I got back to Arizona, I have to mention one other individual, the director of insurance, the director of health, for the state of Arizona, Dr. Lloyd Novick. I didn't have the budget, to pay for the fee that they wanted at that time. It was a fairly significant fee, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was expensive in my view. So I had to go to the director and ask him for the money. He was a physician who was interested in public health. He was the true public health professional. He saw right away the benefit and the need for having an organization like NAHDO. And I think he wrote the first chip. And so I've always respected him for that. He left shortly after that and went to New York City to fight the AIDS epidemic because that was going on at the same time. He just recently died. You won't find his name in any of the annals of NAHDO, but I did want to mention him because of his contribution his unseen contribution that he made.
Oh, great. That's good. I'm glad you mentioned him. Jim, why don't you tell us about some of the early accomplishments of NAHDO the first few years? What were, just maybe pick two of the highlights, the most important things that happened out of those early years?
Sure. So let me start off by saying that it's one thing to have an idea about what needs to be done and go about doing it, but it's entirely different for you to be able to go in and get something started, to do the hard work in getting an organization put together and getting it up and going. And in that regard, I think it's important to note that NAHDO was then, and I assume still is today, a collaborative venture among a number of people. And so in the very beginning, it was a collaboration between WGBH, the Intergovernmental Health Policy Project, and the organization's first executive director. So in the very beginning, I think that the two important milestones for the organization was the securing of a Robert Wood Johnson grant, a multi-year grant, and the title of that was to develop a model hospital discharge data set. That NAHDO put together an expert panel consisting of I guess, first of all, the kind of the usual suspects, hospitals, other providers, insurance companies, and some business, but also included a sort of an interesting eclectic other group of people. For example, the disabled American veterans had a representative on that panel. So that expert panel met a number of times. There was a report completed and submitted to RWJ, and I'll be honestly don't recall exactly when it went in. But that was a critical element, I think, in helping to establish NAHDO as a leadership organization in the field of health data. The second the second achievement that I want to mention is that NAHDO early on took a leadership role in working with the federal government. At that point in time, NCHS was in the process of trying to establish a multi-state hospital database. And NAHDO worked with NCHS and worked with the various states to get states' involvement in that database. And those two things, as I said, kind of set the stage for a lot more work, but what followed. Just building on that quickly, shortly thereafter, the states really, as NAHDO evolved and became a separate not-for-profit organization, the various states began to take an active leadership role in the organization and doing a lot of the work. There was Pennsylvania, there was Iowa, there was Colorado, there was New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Carolina, and Florida. Now, all of those states were not there at the beginning, but those are the group of states, at least from my perspective, that took the early lead in program development, helping put on the annual conference, in membership acquisition, and went through the first some number of years, maybe through 1988, 89, a period of time. So that group of people really deserve a lot of credit for the work that they did to put NAHDO on a firm foundation and start to develop a reputation as a real leader in the world of health data.
Fantastic. Fred, let's turn to you just for a minute. We talked about establishing a model hospital discharge data set. That was for the collection of the data. Those states working together, but did states use this data the same way? You were in 3 different states, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida. Tell us a little bit about how the purpose or the reason for being of these different states varied, or how it was the same.
Sure. Yeah, they were very different. You're right, Norm. I'll start with Arizona briefly, since I already talked a little bit about it. Arizona legislation was based on a compromise between the hospital association and the business community. The business community wanted rate setting. They wanted to turn the rate review program that was in existence at the time into a rate setting program. Hospitals opposed that vehemently. They hated the rate review program and in no way wanted a rate setting program. But so they agreed to promoting competition through the release of information. So the data there was collected primarily to support cost containment and primarily for the purchasers. As you know, employers for the most part are self-funded. They pay for their health care. They may hire an insurance company to pay the claims for them. They may hire an insurance company to provide the cards and so on, but the company itself is responsible for the costs. So they're very, very in tune to, wanting data to support their cost containment activities. Pennsylvania also was concerned about cost. There was a consultant by the name of McClure who had a program called Buy Right, which was very active in Pennsylvania. The business community jumped on board. They wanted the data so that they could begin to buy right. But labor also is very important in Pennsylvania, as you know. And labor insisted that any information that was collected and released to the public to support one hospital or promote one hospital or another over another had to have quality data. So the information that needed to be collected in Pennsylvania was similar in that it was hospital data, but there was additional data that needed to be collected that measured morbidity. That led the state to look at all the different severity illness systems, the morbidity systems, and look at implementing those as a part of the data collection process. If I had thought that Arizona was a little controversial and pushback was difficult there, I kind of went from the frying pan to the fire in Pennsylvania, because when you start talking about measuring a hospital's quality and releasing that to the public, it's a whole other level of interest, I'll say. But we did a pretty good job of collecting the data, getting it out there. And I think in a way that helped to promote some of the initiatives that the federal government took, creating star ratings, for example, where they began to actively measure quality of care of physicians and hospitals and even insurance companies, HMOs. So I think it was a start. We had representatives from Europe coming over, checking on the program. Most of the states in the country were interested in it. It was a high level of interest. And I'll stop there and see what other questions you have.
No, that's great. And
Norm, may I jump in here and just take a couple of minutes to talk about Florida real quickly? Yeah. Florida's approach was different, and I think, as I already said, was based on providing public information. And so, in addition to the hospital charge brochures and the physician charges, we relatively soon also began collecting nursing home charge data. I think we may have been the only state in the country that did that, certainly at that point in time. And then that transitioned then finally into ambulatory surgery data. So that was really the foundation of our program. As I've said, it created a lot of interest for sure, and again, it was really incredible the numbers of people who were interested in that. Did it really have any measurable impact over time? I don't know. I guess if you look at the cost of healthcare today, you'd have to say apparently not. But that was really the basis of our approach, which I think was pretty much different than most states. And again, we certainly had that initial enthusiasm. I mean, I'm still blown away today at the enthusiasm that it created.
Well, great. Well, thank you both. We are going to now open it up to the audience to ask us Q&A. And so we will monitor the Q&A and invite Kathy to join us back on stage. So with that, thank you for your contributions, and we'll invite the audience to participate with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful discussion on the origins of NAHDO. We're now opening this up for questions. As Norm said, while we're looking for questions from the audience, you both led NAHDO in the 80s. What would you say is the most surprising change you have seen in healthcare since that time?
Jim, go ahead.
Fred. You know, it's been. I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, there's so many things that have happened in the past 40 years. Gee whiz. You know, today, I guess AI. I mean, you know, all of the
we're barely hearing you. I don't know if there's an issue with your mic.
Electronic changes that have been made. I mean, you know, we were doing
Kathy, are you hearing it?
Same. Sort of thing. We're having a hard time hearing, Jim.
You know, it was slow. It was cumbersome, and you know, kind of
do you want me to jump in here?
It was really difficult.
That'd be great, Fred.
Get things edited out.
Sorry to talk over you, Jim. Jim was a great boss. I always defer to him, and he's very knowledgeable of healthcare and been very active all these years. I retired about 6 years ago, so I'm blown away with the work that NAHDO is doing. I just am extremely impressed with the breadth and depth of the kind of information that you are working with now, and your clients that you're serving has really expanded. And I think that's testament to just how healthcare has changed today. Back when we were just getting started, there wasn't a whole lot of recognition or knowledge about how health data could be used or should be used. And I think it's a testament to the success of NAHDO that y'all have really expanded that horizon quite a bit. I'm just very impressed with the work that I see coming out of NAHDO and in keeping up with what is going on in the healthcare system today. I think there's, you know, a couple trends. We're seeing a lot more managed care now than we saw back in the 80s. And you know, managed care organizations with HMOs obviously are very interested in information and data. They depend upon information to be successful in their business. Also seeing a lot of hospitals participating in value-based networks and supporting utilization management programs. So there's a whole host of changes that have happened since we were just starting. Competition has changed completely. And I don't know if Jim's got his microphone back on now.
Well, we are getting some questions in the chat. Okay. So I apologize if I get anyone's name wrong. Wade Llewellyn asks, if NAHDO were starting out today in a time of rapid technology growth, privacy concerns, and public skepticism, would its focus be different from when it first began? Or are the core challenges much the same?
Is my mic not on?
We can just barely hear you. So if
okay, well,
yeah.
So all right. Let me just try to talk a little louder because I've been having some technology issues here anyway this morning. Maybe that is an indication of my age. I'm not sure. But the technology has just snowballed so high that it's hard to say. I mean, quite frankly, NAHDO just starting today, I think, would be quite a challenge. I mean, as Fred said, you know, and when I looked at the agenda, I'm just blown away by the breadth of the topics that you all have, and so, you know, for better, well, I guess for better, for those of us who started this, quite frankly, things were a lot simpler at that point in time, and you know, I mean, not that we didn't struggle with things, but it certainly made it, I believe, a lot easier to manage than what it would be today. And you know, so you know, obviously you have people who have experience and expertise in perhaps one area as opposed to others. So you know you can do that better. But I think it would be quite a hurdle to overcome today.
Okay, so let me just summarize. For those of you who couldn't hear, I could hear it, but I'm sure that everyone else couldn't hear. Just to summarize what Jim said, like back then, things were much simpler. The explosion of technology since then has made things much more complicated. And it would probably have been much more difficult to start up an organization like NAHDO today. So in a way, we're really blessed the fact that these folks had the idea of doing it back when it was simple and easy to do. And I hesitate to say it was simple and easy because I don't think it was all that simple and easy. But if you had to start it today and try to pull together a common interest with so much that's going on in the technology world, it would be a very complicated problem to solve and very hard to get this off the ground.
Let me jump in again. Do I have my mic on now? No, all right.
That's all right.
So we have another question in the chat from Lindsay Kill. I thought I heard Jim say that they started in 1984 and had their first published report in 1985. Just wondering how they turned around the data so quickly, as data lag nowadays is a minimum of 9 months. Wondering how it was set up at inception and if there are possible lessons to be learned from that so we can get data more efficiently.
So yes, I mean we worked really hard those first 12 months or so to get that up and going. It was quite a challenge, and again, though, you know, we were talking about some fairly simple reports that came out in that initial period of time. So we were able to get it turned around, and generally kept on a schedule of doing that, actually publishing reports every 3 months there for a number of years.
Yeah, Jim had his own data center. We had our own data center in Pennsylvania, and I think that was very important in the beginning, that the state had control over the data. It was a public database, you know, for the state to use, but that was a big fight. There were a lot of others who felt they had more experience, which was true, in dealing with health data, but they also had their own agendas, which may not have been aligned with the state agenda. And so I think that was a big plus. Jim's data center was pretty well staffed, computers and staffing, high quality people. That was a key, I think, to your success, Jim.
Well, thank you both for all those insights. We'll bring you back on at the end of the session if there are further questions for Jim and Fred. And now, next, let me introduce Denise Love for her thoughts about NAHDO's middle years.
Happy 40th anniversary, NAHDO. I'm Denise Love, NAHDO's former and retired executive director. Thanks to Norm and Charles for this opportunity to present to you at this virtual anniversary meeting, which is my 4th. The 10th anniversary meeting, I was a board member. The 20th and 30th anniversary meetings was as NAHDO's executive director, and of course, today's event. I was asked to distill 20 years of NAHDO history into 10 minutes. So, in what I call the middle years, it was a time of organizational growing pains and capacity building during a time of national, legal, and policy changes at the national level. To comply with my assignment, I've grouped these years into 3 phases. Phase 1, the HIPAA years. Phase 2, the expanded data reporting beyond hospital discharge data years. The APCD years, phase 3. A lot changed in 20 years, but not the NAHDO mission, which remains relevant today, maybe even more so than ever. While the mission didn't change, the technology did. We went from fax machines and postal meters and in-person meetings and lots of frequent flyer miles to Facebook, the cloud, and virtual meetings. My NAHDO tenure took me to all but a handful of states and even to India and France. 2000 to 2002, Phase 1, were the HIPAA years. The HIPAA privacy, transaction, and code set rules were enacted by CMS in 2000. This thrust NAHDO into the national standard privacy arenas. The Public Health Data Standards Consortium brought the data and public health communities together to engage in the industry process defined under the HIPAA legislation. With support from CDC, National Center for Health Statistics, and AHRQ, NAHDO contributed as well to make a state representative attend and join the national standards groups under HIPAA. NAHDO aggressively sought diversification of revenues in this era, beyond membership dues and services and the ACHI project. We needed these revenues to build organizational capacity and stability. We received a 6-year research grant from the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and we received several CDC cooperative agreements. We applied and received several foundation grants and state technical assistance contracts. In 2008, we moved the NAHDO offices from Falls Church, Virginia, to the University of Utah School of Medicine, where we enjoyed low-rent offices and access to the vast computing infrastructure of the School of Medicine, which was helpful for the contracts we had at the time. The NAHDO Award of Excellence has been awarded to leaders in the field that make significant impact on data policies and practices, and it was a no-brainer for the 2000 award to go to Senators Kennedy and Kassenbaum for their bipartisan sponsorship of the landmark 1996 Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, also known as HIPAA. Senator Kassenbaum received the award in person at the annual meeting in D.C., and later I was invited to Senator Kennedy's office to present the award to the staff in those offices. Elliot Stone coordinated the award event, and Dr. Bill Braithwaite on the left, who I call Dr. HIPAA, was the DHHS point person for the HIPAA legislation and rules. One of the results of our national standards work and public health representation was the Health Data Services Reporting Guide. This was approved by ACHI to support the electronic reporting of statewide hospital discharge data using HIPAA standards. This is a screen grab of one of the papers under our 6-year research grant, Building Research Infrastructure and Capacity. This is a study done in Nevada using hospital discharge data and birth data. The BRIT grant brought together 5 Intermountain states, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, under the BRIT Consortium, the Intermountain Building Infrastructure and Capacity Consortium, a collaboration of these states and Stanford University to improve data and research partnerships within states and across the region. NAHDO is forever grateful to Dr. Mark McClellan and Jeffrey Geppert from Stanford, who are research partners in this grant and helped with the research and the data projects. Phase 2 initiatives. The middle phase of the middle years saw NAHDO members expand reporting beyond hospital discharge data sets to include ambulatory surgery, and we elevated the national focus on emergency department data with a national conference bringing CDC, eHealth, and private sector folks together. Quality reporting in the form of hospital-acquired infections and readmissions led states to form the NAHDO Quality Work Group and join the National Quality Forum. Enhancement of the HIPAA transaction standards was important to quality reporting and population health applications. So we were successful in adding present on admission and mother's medical record fields in the X12N HIPAA standard. NAHDO and other groups worked with HHS to standardize and expand race ethnicity fields and include that as a HIPAA external code set as well. The 2008 financial crisis had a profound impact on how NAHDO meetings were funded and conducted. State and agency budgets took huge hits, so we had to get creative. And so we not only downsized our hotel contracts, but we wrote grants to support travel and sessions. In 2005, a mentor and colleague, Elliot Stone, passed away. His loss was felt deeply by all in the field. To honor his leadership, NAHDO renamed the NAHDO Award of Excellence to the Elliot M. Stone Award of Excellence in Health Data Leadership and presented this award to Elliot posthumously. The award was presented to Elliot's wife and sons at our 20th annual meeting by Bob Davis and Louis Freedman. Now we're at the APCD years, phase 3. These were defined by the rapid implementation of all payer claims databases across states. In 2008, the Commonwealth Fund supported a workshop in Beverly, Massachusetts, with 25 states from Hawaii to Maine attending. Shortly after that, the APCD Council, a collaboration between the University of New Hampshire and NAHDO, was formed and replaced the RAFIC, the Regional All-Payer Health Information Council. We rebranded, basically. And the Learning Network was also launched, providing technical assistance and shared learning across the states. Well, then we got to ERISA. I could speak a long time on ERISA, the Supreme Court case Gobey versus Liberty Mutual, challenging the collection of ERISA self-funded data by states. NAHDO worked with Squires Boggs Patton, a law firm in Denver, to file an amicus brief or a Supreme Court hearing on behalf of state APCDs. While the outcome was not what we wanted, it did lead to APCD agencies engaging more closely with their self-funded employers to voluntarily report ERISA data, and it supercharged our alignment of common formats to the Common Data Layout, CDL, which is a project that continues today. These are just examples of the large body of work done during this phase. The left is the All-Payer Claims Database paper issue brief funded by the Commonwealth Fund. The middle is really a how-to or a manual, technical manual for states implementing all-payer claims databases based on lessons learned. And then again, the amicus brief that we filed for the SCOTUS hearing. Although it was overshadowed by APCDs, in 2010, after a decade of industry resistance, CMS finalized the ICD-10 CM code set rule. With CDC funding, NAHDO and Dr. Romano's team at UC Davis were funded for 3 years to provide technical assistance to CDC surveillance and survey programs. I was sorry to recently hear of Willis Goldbeck's passing. As NAHDO's founder, he was a visionary and a mentor to me and others, and he has spoken at previous anniversary meetings. His 2016 keynote address at NAHDO's 20th meeting was a challenge address which still has relevance to today's environment. What do we consider to be really important? Can NAHDO lead the way to be the trusted source, its members collectively and individually? How do you become a trusted source at the risk of alienating some people and entities that see themselves as wanting to influence what you do? It's not easy to do, but at the end of the day, it's more important that you build the trust than you make everyone happy. So, NAHDO is not a brick and mortar entity, but it's a network of dedicated experts like you all here working for the public good. NAHDO's work, in my opinion, is more important today than it's ever been, given what is happening or not happening, actually, at the national levels. In closing, I challenge you all to seize the opportunities to fill these critical gaps in the national health data landscape, and I leave you with a few considerations for the future. From my perch, these considerations may be who pays. I relied on national grants and contracts, but new funding models for public data will need to be developed for today's environment. Who decides what's collected and how it's reported? In the absence of national leadership, like the NCVHS, NAHDO has a huge role to play, in my opinion, especially as with the AI and health system disruptions that we see happening around us. Who leads? States and NAHDO, together with coalitions of the willing, will have to lead the way to communicate and demonstrate the critical role that independent, objective health information plays in improving health and health decisions. In closing, I wanted to warn all of you who will be retiring in the next little while that retirement is really, really hard work. I hope you have a great rest of the meeting, and I hope to see you at NAHDO's 50th anniversary meeting.
Thank you, Denise. I loved those final pictures. You covered a lot of ground in your presentation, and thank you for all your years at the helm of NAHDO. We're now opening this up for questions or maybe a memory or two from the audience. While we wait for their questions, I'm wondering, what were some of the important lessons learned during those years?
Well, I think the takeaway as I reflect, and this is a great opportunity to reflect in the past and look forward. So thank you for holding this meeting. But I think the collaboration and communication outreach, we could not have gotten through those 20 years if we didn't know a lot of people and have a huge network. And when we had some financial troubles in early 2000, we gave a call to Stanford. We applied for a grant, but Stanford backed us up and took $35,000 out of a $300,000 grant. But they were willing to help because of the idea of NAHDO. And so I think it's collaboration, outreach, and mission focus. Those were the three legs I think that we stood on, sometimes stronger than others.
Well, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Please put them in the chat. And what word or words might best define these years, do you think, Denise?
Just dogged persistence. I mean, there were, and there's always challenges, but NAHDO is small enough to be nimble. The challenge I had was the idea of NAHDO, or the perception of NAHDO and the federal government, was that we were much bigger than we were. We might have had, at one time I had 5 staff, but sometimes it was 2 or 3 of us. So we could be nimble, but I think the federal government thought we had a huge infrastructure. And so it was sort of alarming when they found out that it was like the Wizard of Oz. Behind the curtain, there were Denise and some of her staff. But the members were what sold it. Our reach, our ability to bring you all together, and the fantastic expertise in the field that we could pick up a phone, call Kathy Hines, Louis Freedman, or whoever that might be, and say, what do we do about this? How do we do this? And I want to add one more thing. I miss Willis, and I knew him for many years, and he was a force of nature. And so I'm glad that we acknowledged him today, as we did Elliot Stone.
Well, thank you, Denise. We'll bring you back on screen at the end of this session. And for our final segment, let's welcome Jonathan Mathieu and Karynlee Harrington, recent NAHDO board chairs, to hear their thoughts on the value of NAHDO. And again, we urge attendees, enter your memories and questions in the chat. Thanks. Jonathan and Karynlee, would you like to give a few words about your work in this area?
Glad to. Thank you, Kathy. I'm Jonathan Mathieu. I got started in the all-payer claims database business in 2012 when I joined the staff at the Center for Improving Value in Healthcare, or CIVIC, the administrator of the Colorado APCD. I have been active in the APCD community ever since. I believe I became a board member at NAHDO in about 2015, board chair a year or two after that. And when I joined Freedman Healthcare in January of 2019, I had to step down as a NAHDO board member, as well as chair. But it's been my honor and privilege to be part of NAHDO for about 13 years now. It's hard to believe, and great to be here with all of you today.
Hi, my name is Karynlee Harrington, and I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Health Data Organization and the Maine Quality Forum, both independent state agencies within Maine government. And we are required to work together on promoting the transparency of healthcare costs and quality data. And I've been doing this now for over 13 years. And in that time, I've been associated with the NAHDO board as a board member. And I think between 2019 through 2022, I was the chair of the NAHDO board. And look forward to the conversation with Jonathan this afternoon or this morning.
That's great. A lot has changed at NAHDO since 1986. What do you each feel is the single most important principle or benefit of NAHDO that has stood the test of time over the 4 decades? Jonathan, you want to start?
Sure. Longevity is key, and this is in some ways a smallish movement, but a very, very important one. And I think NAHDO's perseverance, starting with hospital data, collection, analysis, and reporting, morphing into an APCD phase, bringing hospital data back in the last few years. NAHDO has just always been there for 40 years now, and provided a place for like-minded people to get together, to share ideas, dreams, hopes, and it's just been very, very exciting. I wasn't around for the early years, the first 2.5 or so decades, but what I've seen since 2012 has been just really exciting. The growth, the continued interest, the growing number of APCD states, the renewed interest in hospital data, and all sorts of things on the horizon that we'll be talking about some more in the next 15, 20 minutes.
I think that's so true. And I think that one of the other huge benefits is the networking that it allows for and the platform that it provides for. And as Jonathan said, just the community of like-minded folks who are interested in this work and focused in this work. And I think one of the things NAHDO has helped me a lot with is staying informed on some of the issues that affect the work that we do that are either, national or regional. And I think that another really important aspect that NAHDO brings to the table is getting us to think about not just what is in front of us in the moment, but more about where are we going in the future, and to be nimble and to think about the fact that healthcare, the way people use data today may not be the same way we use data 2 years from now, 5 years from now, or the types of data that we're looking for. And one of the things I think about in particular is data linking, and this idea of bringing these disparate data sets together and creating a much more powerful data set, I think is one of the things that I've taken away from my time at NAHDO as something that's really, really important and we've started to do in Maine.
Nice. What did you find was the biggest challenge for the NAHDO members during your tenure as board chair? Could each of you share an example of how NAHDO fostered a bridge between the interests of the private and the public sectors? And to switch it up, I'll start with you this time, Karynlee.
So I think one of the greatest challenges during the time that I was the chair is NAHDO was in its own transition. So we were transitioning to a new executive director. And at the time, the person that was leaving had been there, I think, for over 20 years. And that's a long time. And a lot of institutional knowledge and all of that was leaving. And so bringing in a new executive director, and then ultimately some of the staff changed. And so there was a new team, and just sort of that transition, which also sort of opened up our eyes to thinking about sustainability of the organization and the organization's value proposition, which I think are some of the same issues that many of us that run these types of programs in the States are facing, and we faced at that time, and we continue to be challenged with. And so, really sort of focusing on what is our sustainability model and what is our value proposition, and being really clear about the goals and the and the benefit to the states was really important to the organization during that time of transition.
And
Yeah,
Jonathan, go ahead.
sure. I was just going to say I preceded Karynlee as board chair, and many of the same things apply. I think there was a little bit of a lull in new APCD activity in the country when I became board chair. But a question, and this is part of NAHDO's success, but a question that has always been asked in different ways at different times is, how do we generate more value for our members? And, board retreats, board dinners at annual conferences, that was always a topic of conversation. People never stopped asking that question. And some of the things that we talked about when I was involved with the board, how do we get some standardization into the mix, which ultimately led to CDL development, APCD CDL development? How do we get more people on board or participating in the APCD movement? How do we help people solve governance challenges regarding data access and release? The old saying, you've seen one APCD, you've seen one APCD. How do we better coordinate the activities of multiple APCDs? And as I said a minute ago, NAHDO has always provided a forum for those kinds of discussions. And how do we generate more value for our members, that constant search for new ways of doing that, I think that's been just critical to NAHDO's success.
So NAHDO saw a significant transformation, as Karynlee spoke about a little bit during both your tenures, and it was that we did have a shift in the leadership of NAHDO. There was also a lot going on in the healthcare arena. There was the 42 CFR Part 2. There was the loss of the self-insured. How did you see NAHDO grow and evolve during that time?
So I'll just speak. I think that these are still two very relevant topics that we continue to struggle with. And I think that what NAHDO has done successfully is kept the states informed in terms of different opportunities within the federal government for commenting on rules and bringing the organization or bringing the membership together to talk about, whether it's joint communications or we're all sending in communications that, again, help support the positions that we were taking at the time. That coordination and leadership, in my mind, is what's missing at a state level and what we need through NAHDO. And the same with the self-funded ERISA challenges and thinking about, educating the folks in Congress about, how we can address these issues. I think that the challenge is everyone wants data, including the federal government. And so we've got to figure out ways to, work through some of these challenges so that these really important data continue to be part of our data sets. And I think NAHDO, again, has been instrumental in bringing us together and keeping us informed. And I'll just say quickly, I think one of the things that I was the most proud of when I left as the chair of the board was setting up the CEO roundtable. And it's expanded. So it's more than just, CEOs that are attending those meetings. But I think it's a really good opportunity to have leadership within the state programs to come together and, again, have a platform to learn what's going on, but also to leverage one another's experience and expertise. And from my perspective, they've been really valuable.
Yeah, from my thoughts are that NAHDO has always had to help people at different points in their journey, right? Meeting states and APCDs where they are. What was striking to me and I found enormously helpful is when the Gobet decision came down, and states can't compel self-funded ERISA plans to submit data anymore. That affected members very differently. For the early APCD adopters, this was a big deal. They were going to lose out on a big chunk of data they were used to being able to collect year in and year out. Civic came a little bit later, so the Colorado APCD wasn't affected as much. And people who were kind of new to the APCD world, Gobey, ERISA, what? But NAHDO and APCD Council were there to provide information and meet people where they were and help those organizations understand the implications for them. I would say similar things about 42 CFR Part 2 and substance use disorder treatment data. States are in different places. Payers handle that differently. Some payers are very conservative and squash anything that looks like a SUD treatment claim. Some payers are a little bit more generous in sharing that data. But APCD Council and NAHDO during that time window looked at legislation. They looked at regulatory changes coming out of SAMHSA. They interpreted what those changes might mean for all payer claims databases. Turns out these were not sea changes. They were sort of tinkering around the edges, making data more available for research. But nonetheless, the organization was nimble, provided information in different ways depending upon the needs of a particular member. And I think a lot of value came out of that.
Looking ahead, what emerging data source or analytic area do you believe NAHDO must prioritize to best serve its members over the next 10 years? And what is one health policy area where you see a critical need for better data, and how can NAHDO help to fill that gap?
To me, some of the most exciting opportunities are similar to what we were talking about back in 2012, and that is bringing data together from different sources to support analysis that drives database decisions, and intelligent policy choices. In 2012, people were talking about bringing claims and clinical data together. And Kyle Russell from VHI and Matt Enright from DIN did a great Igniter session where they talked about those two states' experiences and challenges in bringing those two data sources together. Another flavor of that is APCD sharing data or making data available from multiple APCDs to support research. And there have been some projects that have leveraged those capabilities, those ideas, but I think there's still a lot more that can be done just to make APCD data standard compatible across states to facilitate that kind of analysis, and the APCD CDL is an important step down that road. And then finally, I would say the third flavor are things like the Rhode Island ecosystem, which brings together data from 10 or more state agencies to support analysis under a consensus governance structure. And that's a great example of thinking outside the claims and clinical box about opportunities to bring people together to better inform policy. And I think NAHDO can play a really important role there.
I couldn't agree more. I think that we need to continue to be thinking about data linking of these disparate data sets. And I think that, as Jonathan pointed out, there's some really good examples of states that have made some really good progress. I think linking claims data, hospital encounter data, I think linking some of the hospital transparency data that hospitals are required to post on their websites under a federal law. There's a wealth of information in those data sets. And I think bringing those together, all of that is, I think, where we've got to go as we move forward. And I think in terms of a new data stream, I know in Maine, one of the things that people are very interested in, especially post-COVID, is workforce capacity. And I think when we talk about healthcare costs and we talk about healthcare quality and transparency, you can't not talk about workforce capacity. And I think a lot of the data that we collect, whether it be through claims data or the hospital encounter data, we have a lot of information about providers, but I think it needs to be supplemented with other types of data collection around workforce. And I think that's something that many states are doing great work in this area. I think figuring out how to take that workforce data and integrate it into other data sets like what we collect in claims or hospital encounter data, again, would create a much more robust information set for policy and resource allocation and strategies around how to maintain, for example, a sustainable, high-functioning primary care system in a state. And I think the lack of that data will prevent some of the things that I think, we need to do to, address some of these issues. So I'm really excited, and I hope NAHDO might take a look at that and help us think through how to make that a reality.
Those are some excellent ideas. In January, we are going to have a new board chair. If you had to give one piece of advice to the next NAHDO board chair, what would it be? I'll go with Jonathan on this one first.
Okay. Come in with an open mind. Know that you are following in the footsteps of a lot of very dedicated and committed people. This is a terrific organization. It continues to grow. More and more people attending online and in-person NAHDO events. There's, I think, just a really exciting opportunity to continue to push the limits of what can be done with healthcare data in all of its various forms. Don't be constrained by the naysayers. We all have to live within privacy, security, and other legal and regulatory requirements, but that doesn't mean you can't think creatively about ways to free the data even more. Just come at this with an open mind, and know that you've got a whole lot of people that depend on you and are pulling for you and will help you realize whatever it is that's coming next.
And Karynlee?
Same sort of theme. Be nimble, be bold, rely on the team at NAHDO. There's a great group there. It's small. They're small but mighty. And rely on board members that have experience. And, I also found helpful to get out and talk with the states. And that's in a lot of ways how I created my own network, was just getting out and talking with the states and understanding from them what are the priorities and what are the challenges. So, and have fun. And time goes by fast, and it's a good time, a lot of networking opportunity, and there's really an opportunity to make a difference. So do it.
I'd say those are also excellent reasons for joining NAHDO in the first place. Any final comments or insights you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
I started out by saying I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been a member of the NAHDO board and board chair for a little while. It's exciting to see this continue. It's exciting to see the APCD community grow. I think in 2012, when there were about 10 or 11 of us, some of the states that are now members of the club, if you will, people weren't really talking about some of those states, and yet here they are. They're members. They're moving forward with this. There's a lot of potential to inform policy, to take decisions out of the, well, this feels right, and start making decisions, or make even more decisions in a data-driven kind of way. So I think the future is bright, as Karynlee said. The gatherings are terrific. The networking opportunities are terrific. The places we get together in person are terrific. Join, stay active, and I really look forward to what's ahead.
And I'm just going to say ditto.
Well, thank you both for your time. This has been very interesting and informative. I think now we will open it up to the audience for their thoughts, questions, and insights. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
So thank you, Jonathan and Karynlee. These were exciting times in the healthcare data landscape. I think we're going to have a few minutes for some questions for the two of you before we bring everyone back on. So if the audience has some questions for Karynlee and or Jonathan, please enter them in the chat. For me, you spoke about the need for bringing data together from different sources. Could you give us a few examples of data linking that your teams have been engaged in?
So I can start. We have been very involved, and we've been doing this for a few years now, in linking our claims and hospital data to our cancer registry and vital statistics data. And we're in the process of thinking about linking our claims data and our hospital encounter data, and also thinking about taking the hospital transparency data that I had mentioned. We are taking that all in, creating one big file, and we've been working through that data set to determine if it is, where there are issues. I think my father used to say, people always do what you inspect, not what you expect. And so I think one of the challenges is I think about conversations with other folks across the country is they've had some concerns about the quality of the data that's in those files or postings. And I think that until we start using them, people may not pay as close attention to the quality of the data that's in those postings. So I really encourage folks, there's a lot of information, and I think it can help supplement some data that, many of us already have. And I do want to just say, while I have an opportunity really quickly, that this conversation for the last hour or so has been awesome. And it's a reminder to me that when passion and purpose collide, anything is possible. And, going back to the 80s and now talking about 2025, a lot of the same issues in this and that. But the thing that strikes me as, again, there's this passion for this work, and there's a real purpose. And it's just awesome to see it continue, and the people that will come after us and continue to carry on. So anyways, thank you. Just wanted to say that.
A couple of thoughts. Linking is fabulous and very powerful when you can do it and do it well. But we've all seen examples where, free text fields and whatnot create real challenges. Unique person identifiers and whatnot are very, very helpful, but not always available. Agree completely with everything Karynlee just said, and the opportunities that her organization has created are terrific. I think where there's another opportunity, though, is to think creatively about data governance. And this is what a couple of states they've taken that ball and run with it. Not so much linking data or having it all live in one system or one cloud or one stack of servers, but creating a governance structure where people can make requests from multiple data sources to bring the information together in a way that allow them to answer policy questions that no single data source or perhaps even two data sources could begin to address. So in addition to direct linkage, I just let's all think about new and creative ways to create consensus data governance structures that foster data sharing across multiple platforms.
That's great. There's a question from the audience that I think that leads well into, from Chris Odell. Who are some new potential users of APCD and other linked data sources, hospital, HIE, cancer registry, etc.? Where would you like to see these types of data used where they currently are not used?
The research community, I think, has long been and always will be very close partners and allies in all of this. Something that's been interesting to me since the time I got involved with APCDs and whatnot is the transition. That's not really a transition, but yeah, it is a bit of a transition, I think, away from sort of traditional consumer shopping tools as we've thought of them, and toward data sharing or data uses that inform policy. So rather than a consumer shopping tool. And those are valuable, and they've made a big mark, and they've helped put this whole movement on the map. But there's starting to be a little bit of a shift more toward cost driver analysis and really digging in on the things, the myriad things in healthcare that are really making a difference in terms of cost growth and total spending growth over time. And I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity. I hope there'll be a lot more opportunity to bring those multiple data sources together in ways that inform decision-making and policy in government.
Well, I think at this point we have just a few minutes left, so I'd like to open this back up with Kenley, Norm, Jim, Fred, and Denise back on stage. We'll have a few final minutes for our audience to pose questions to the group. I just want to say this, for me, has been an exciting presentation. We've gone over 40 years of healthcare data collection, and I can't wait to see the next 40. We do have one question in the chat that was specifically for Denise, but I think that really anyone could answer it. And I'm looking for it now. Oh, if NAHDO has one policy, funding, or technology barrier removed tomorrow, what would accelerate the NAHDO mission the most today? So if we had a barrier, funding, or policy barrier removed, what would be the best to accelerate NAHDO? And since it was directed to Denise, I'll ask Denise her thoughts first.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but I think if the cadence of state release could be condensed and accelerated, the value proposition to employers and others might be heightened. That's one thing I heard over my years is you have great data, but it's 2 years old by the time I get it. And by the time you aggregate it, it's even longer, as ACHI is a testament to. So innovation in the cadence of release, maybe preliminary metrics, novel metrics on less pure data. It's an art. I think it can be done. That's one thing that resounds with me.
Would someone else like to jump in, or shall I just pick someone?
Kathy?
Yes.
Kathy. This is Jim. Hopefully people can hear me now.
Yes, Jim.
I didn't want
to hear you
answer that, but I wanted to go back to something Jonathan just said, and that is the use of the data in making policy. I think that was one of the things that helped us a lot in the beginning of our data. We worked very hard to make ourselves useful to the Florida legislature at that point in time, helping them make various policy decisions. Now, obviously, the data we had 40 years ago was not nearly as sophisticated. Doing that are just multiple times what they were back then. But I think that's a very powerful way to get the data out, and to make yourself useful. I mean, the data is only as good as it can be used in making decisions and making policy. So to me, that's a critical item. Then, and it is today, and will be moving forward.
Thank you, Jim. Karynlee, do you have thoughts?
I agree. I think that relevancy is so important. If we are not relevant and the data is not being used to help policymakers make decisions, they're not going to fund our work, or they won't help support it. And I also think that we've got to figure out, and this is hard to do in state government for those programs that are part of state government, but we've got to figure out how to be nimble. And that is difficult to do in government, but it is critical because, again, the way people use data today is not going to be the same way they use it 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And we've got to stay ahead of it, or at least stay on top, with it as it moves along. And that is really hard to do. You can do it, but it's hard.
And can I say that's one of the beauties of NAHDO? Every now and then we have a state breakthrough. I mean, something that blows everyone's mind, be it APCD or a measure. And that really resounded then with other states that if California can do it, or if Utah can put it on the web, why can't we? And as a group, it brings the others along. So I just wanted to say the innovations are happening, and they spread and continue that innovation and groundbreaking work. But I'm really worried about the vacuum at the national level. And this is NAHDO's opportunity, in my opinion, to fill some gaps. And it's easy for me to say because I don't have to do it.
Well, I think we're just about at time now, right, Norm? So does anyone have a few closing thoughts they'd like to share?
Just a quick couple of thoughts on, some of the constraints that we face freeing the data. The DOJ pulling the statements of antitrust enforcement a couple of years ago, I think have been really helpful, but there are opportunities I think, for states to leverage that data now that maybe antitrust or anti-competitive use is a little bit less of a concern. I've said this at NAHDO meetings for several years. I wish we could have an adult conversation about substance use disorder, because a lot of money is spent and in ways that we don't understand and can't analyze the way we can with other healthcare services. And I think there's a real opportunity to help people by informing some of those conversations with data. And of course, PHI is always there with us, and there's not much we can do to change HIPAA, but and unlikely that the vacuum is going to take up a serious discussion of HIPAA and high tech, but I remain hopeful.
Well, thank you all for this wonderful discussion. It really has been awesome. And Norm, I think it's time to turn it back over to you.
Oh, I'm just so excited. This is, I'm just looking at the screen right now and just think of all of the experience and the knowledge that is represented on the screen right now. And to know that this is an important slice, but it is just a slice of what's happening on the other side of our screens, the 250 plus people who have participated in session today, the years of experience, the ideas, the thoughts that they have had. And just want to thank you all for taking the time to come back and reminisce with us, both the presenters and the participants. In terms of housekeeping, as of course everybody knows, that this is just our first session. We've got 3 days of jam-packed stuff. You probably won't even be able to get to everything you want to get to, or at least I hope that you get to as much as you can. Coming up next, we have our first round of networking sessions. So as soon as we finished here, those networking rooms will be open. If you show up in a networking room and you're there by yourself, just wait a minute. Last year we had people say, well, I went there, but there was nobody there. And I was like, well, you were there. So just hang out. People will come and join you, and then have a conversation. We put topics just so that we would attract like people with similar interests. But as you attendees participate in those sessions, just take the time to get to know each other. Use those as a networking opportunity, and leave today having met somebody new who shares your thoughts, your aspirations, your goals, your vision, and maybe your frustrations. So we want you to make sure that that's part of your day today. So with that, I'm going to thank again Kathy, Kenley, and all of our panelists today. This has been exciting for me to revisit our history, to learn from our history. I don't know if we were able to put up the final poll results, and we were not able to get Jim and Fred and Denise to put their votes in. They were all of course, in that first bin. But look at NAHDO. Look at what we do here. We are 85% people who are joining us in the last 10 years. So today was an important reminder for us. This is where we came from. This is our roots. This is our history. But 85% of you today are relatively new to the topic. That's 10 years is a long time, but it's not as long as 40. I'll tell you that. So, by the way, just in case people are asking, I'm one of those 2.9% in that second decade. So, 2003 was my first experience with NAHDO. But again, thank you all, and we'll see you over in the networking rooms. And if not there, we'll see you this afternoon for one of our breakout sessions. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you all later.
Thank you.